I was switched on to the Darios quite early on, and I never broke them. It just always sounded dead good. There was a consistency. If you open a pack of Darios, you knew exactly what you'd be getting. You wouldn't find anything perish or anything rusty.
Hey y'all, we love bringing you content, so go ahead and subscribe and we'll keep you up to date on everything.
We promise.
Hey everybody, I'm John Bohlinger with Premier Guitar and I'm with Dan Huff in his studio. Dan, thanks so much for having us over.
Thanks for having me, John. Appreciate that.
So you just completed this record, but I kind of want to talk a little bit about you're a Nashville native.
I am, yes.
And you grew up with like Gordon Kennedy and isn't that amazing?
One of my dearest friends. Yeah.
Isn't that incredible? You guys grew up together and had these amazing careers. Did you? I mean, were you two like the top of the? Because you were just like teenagers, right? Playing together.
The irony before we started rolling, we were talking about how long I was telling you I lived in many houses in Nashville. My parents just had this penchant for moving every 5 years, and they almost stuck to it.
Really?
Literally, yeah. Really? I've always told people it was probably they had problems with the IRS, but the seminal years. I mean, here's it's not an irony. It's just it is what it is. I made this record. Didn't know I was going to make this record, but as I dug into it, it seemed to want to pull me towards those years with Gordon Kennedy, right?
Yeah.
So, because those were the formative years of my musical journey and kind of coming to life, right? Growth, evolution, whatever adjective you want to use, and so we went to school down the street here in Brentwood, Tennessee, at Brentwood Academy, a little teeny. It was a sports school.
Oh, really?
So we were there for sports. Gordon was a great athlete, and I played everything. The only thing I wouldn't play was football, which got me in trouble. Because they wanted me to play football. I thought, I'm not going to hurt my hands.
Yeah, good call.
But anyway, other than that, it was a lovely thing, but they had no music department to speak of.
Huh.
So do you want to hear the story?
Yeah.
Okay.
I love to see how it all kind of happened.
This is so your viewers, listeners know all about Gordon. Great musician, great guitarist,
incredible,
great writer.
Amazing songwriter. Yeah,
the whole package. He comes from Nashville royalty. Jerry Kennedy is his father. Great session guitar player. So I mean, it's right there for the taking. We met in high school and. Not much of a music department at that point. They have a big one now, but back then it was like it was a gymnasium and a building and a football field. So anyway, there was a young music teacher that they hired probably just because they had to. They were not a school that was dedicated to the arts at this point.
Yeah.
His name was Ron Schuff, of all people.
Oh, really?
My dad's name was Ron Huff, so that was funny. and Ron Schuff, blessed individual. His empathy, his love of teaching music, he's still doing it. You know, that's who he is. But at that particular point in time, this is mid-70s, Brentwood, Tennessee, sports school, he knew that he had two young 15, 16-year-old kids that were just, we say here, eat up with music.
Right.
And he said, look, guys, as long as you keep your grades up, study hall is yours. Bring your amps, your guitars. You can sit in the music wing of the school and practice.
Oh.
So Gordon, and it was like the record of the month thing. It was like a Wired, Blow by Blow.
Oh God, right.
Boston.
What a great time in music, right?
Oh, I mean it can go on, and he would bring in stuff. Barefoot Jerry, Wayne Moss, Jimmy Covard.
Right.
He would bring in
Russ Hicks. Russ Hicks
yes,
was in that.
steel guitar player.
Yeah.
Yes, And so he would bring that in, or because he grew up in a house that had more country music, he would expose me to that.
Right. And your father is an arranger,
orchestrator.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had the whole different discipline.
So I had no guitars in my house. I had the my first one was an aria. So I mean, we got the job done. Gordon had. I've still held him in contempt for this all these years. He had all of his father's collection, which was vast. But so I would bring in an Al Di Meola record, and both of us would, because we were such
Ellie and Gypsy.
Oh man, we would just sit there and try to fumble through things and play. We didn't know this, but it was the equivalent of going to any musical school, and it was because we had these questions, we had this material, and we had all the time.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that was the whole deal, and so it's funny how things kind of they come full circle in life.
God, isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
I mean, and then you're in the band with your brother Whiteheart, and I think you produced that early project, right?
No.
Oh,
I don't think I did. I mean, I don't think that was. I think it was somebody else.
Yeah.
I never got paid.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, I think I was reading up on it. I think you're listed as a co-producer on some of that.
Well, that would be fair.
Yeah, because I think you're one of these guys that just has ideas, even as a kid, and you probably were steering the ship about arrangements and things like that.
Yeah. I was not long for that band, and it caused a little bit of riff in the band.
Well, and that's when you put Gordon in, right?
Well, I didn't put anybody. I just said I got a great friend who's great, and they were all worried about losing a guitar player, and probably worried about my immortal soul at that point. I'm gonna move to.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever it was.
Well, then you moved to L.A., right?
But here's the funny thing: this is the great thing, and I say this with it's a wink and a smile, but they seemed less worried about my immortal soul once they found Gordon. Burn in hell, buddy. Have a good day.
Yeah, burn out. We're covered.
Yeah. So that was it. That was and Sherry and I had just gotten married, and Sherry, for you guys who are listening to this or watching this, I speak of her as if you would know her. We have been connected at the hip since we were 13 years old, my wife.
Oh, God.
And so there were a couple years in there when my parents were afraid I was going to be making babies in my high school years.
Yeah, sure.
They maneuvered a breakup.
Not uncommon.
Not
in
uncommon.
Tennessee.
It wasn't going to happen. Well, Sherry is my sister. Did I? Yeah, right. So, no. But anyway, so the thing is, we were young, and she was a nurse supporting my guitar habit. Yeah. And I had an opportunity, and literally, I think it was at 22 years old, we just headed out west. And so that was it. So I wasn't long in the Whiteheart years.
Yeah.
But we made a couple decent records. They made better records after I left. So, I mean, they really came to fruition as a band. Yeah.
So you moved out to L.A. with Sherry, and just how did you break into the session thing? Because you're an amazing player, but it's wildly competitive. I don't know if you knew anybody there. Did you have an in?
I did. I had several people. I mean, nobody's self-made. It was a combination of timing. This is everybody knows Steve Lukather.
Yeah.
He was exiting the.
Toto was just taking off. Right?
Yeah. So and he was becoming a rock star, and so as he exited studio playing, which he had to do, there was a vacuum, and I had practiced enough during those. I got my 10,000 hours in, and so that's the timing, and I would say the luck component of it, specifically because I had played on. I think I was like 20 or 19 or 20, just somewhere right in there. I had played on a record amongst. I didn't do many records at that age here in Nashville, but there were a couple producers who were. They found my playing something to their taste, and so one of them was a guy named Ron Hafkin, hired me to play on a Lou Rawls record.
Really?
We tracked it. He took it out to the West Coast to do overdubs with a. He wasn't upcoming. He'd already arrived. He was an arranger, keyboardist named Robbie Buchanan, and we got on the phone. He heard my playing, and he got on the phone. And he said, "Hey, you should move to Los Angeles."
Wow.
Where does that come from? And so anyway, it's a little bit longer story, but I started going out there, and I didn't know that you could charge for for cartage, for your I didn't know that you could actually. I didn't move there at that time. You could actually charge for your airfare, your hotel bills. I was so naive, shall we say, and hungry to just be noticed.
Right.
That every time that I would go out there, I would notice all my bills. I would end up losing at least $1,000 every trip per session.
Wow.
And I thought, well, this is kind of not going to be sustainable for me. And so we packed up and took very little belongings and just moved out there with a kind of wide open heart. And in answer to your question, getting around, this is a long answer to this, it just kind of happened organically. It just so that was the preparation. I didn't screw it up. It was one of those things, because I have been asked, as you can imagine, how did you maneuver that quick break in?
Right, as a kid from Tennessee, I mean, amazing. Amazing you had the confidence too.
That's something Sherry and I have talked about, because she thinks that I was really confident. I don't know if I ever felt confident. I think I was just so naive that I wasn't aware. Like, I'd get in the rooms with some people, and I mean, I was aware who they were, but I was just young enough not to have developed fear at that point.
Right.
Healthy respect, but not fear. So anyway, all those things, they have to converge. Was I able to orchestrate that? Could that be orchestrated again? Flip a coin. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, but the point is, you get in when you get in. Mike, did we talk about this when we talked the other day about Michael Thompson?
Oh, no.
Great session guitar player, great guy too.
Yeah.
Michael and I have talked. We talked briefly about it, but his was more of the 10-year journey.
Right.
Which
is more common.
Which is more common. Which,
like you and Vince Gill are the only guys that just went straight.
But it doesn't. It's no indication of superior talent. I'll say that. It's just because I think,
although that helps.
Well, you got to have talent.
Yeah,
I mean, but there are so many other forces, and the only reason this is not, I don't think it's modesty. This is just what I've observed, and it is the truth. Especially for younger guitarists or musicians who are wanting to break in. I think it's essential that you know that, because you could hold yourself up to a litmus test that's not fair.
Right.
Right. I mean, because it's not. It's more about your dedication. Right. And if I didn't have a B plan, right,
yeah,
which I don't know that I would be that way now. I think I'd probably be more of a B plan kind of person, but all these things play in. But Michael Thompson, getting back to him, what a incredible career. My career wasn't any better than Michael's, and he had a 10-year wait, something like that.
Wow.
I mean, he wasn't waiting to do a session for 10 years, but it wasn't the same. Yeah. But the results are the same.
Right.
In my estimation.
Sure. No. How did Giant happen? I mean, because I've heard different stories.
Sure.
About like how the band all happened, and the story that I'd heard is that that some people recognized you as this great talent, and they saw your brother and thought, this is a band, and there was kind of like you were encouraged towards the whole artist thing. How did it all happen?
Yeah, I didn't hear that story. But
yeah, this is rock lore.
No, that's good.
This is rock lore.
That's good. That's a good story.
Yeah.
I mean, my memory of it was this. My dear friend Alan Pasqua, talk about superior talent.
Yeah.
Jazz musician, played with Tony Williams when he was 19 freaking years old.
Jeez.
Played with Alan Holdsworth. I mean, it's like,
wow.
Yeah, I mean, ridiculous harmonic. His facilities, everything about the guy are, just like superhuman. But he loved rock and roll music, of all things, So and he could play. He was a badass B3 player. Anyway, we were playing sessions, and as people do when they do one thing all the time, and we were lucky enough to be doing it 2, 3, 4 sessions a day, just like a production thing. We had some friends, Tom Kelly, Tommy Funderburk, great singers. Tom Kelly was a hit songwriter. He was writing at that time his big breakthrough. And if Tom hears this, I'm probably eliminating the majority of what he had done, but this is what I knew him at that time.
Yeah.
He had just written Like a Virgin for Madonna,
Wow.
He and Billy Steinberg, and he was a great singer. So he and Tommy Funderburk were doing all the high harmonies on all the big rock records. Mike Baird was the drummer. Dennis Belfield, bass player. These guys, your credits, I mean, are ridiculous. Yeah. And Alan and myself, and they just said, let's do a band. So, well, why not? So through somebody, we commandeered REO's Speedwagon's rehearsal hall somewhere in the valley, and we were able to somebody let us hang there, and they would bring in songs, they would write songs, and we had this really cool band, kind of, the idea of a Toto-ish kind of band, a bunch of studio musicians. Sure. Anyway, we excuse me, we went and did some demos. Nothing really came out of it. I mean, it was good.
Were you singing in the band at that point?
No.
Yeah, that's okay. That's the part of the rock lore, is that you had this band together and were looking for singers, and finally said, "Man, Dan, why don't you sing?"
Well, it kind of came out. I mean, it basically emanated from the fact that we really weren't getting there, but Alan and I started writing some songs together, and there was just an attraction. So since it wasn't happening, at least to our expectations there, we got up to my little room, or his room in his garage at that point, and I just started singing demos. And, I mean, you're just kind of feeling it out. And as it went, that's when we got some interest. I don't know who heard, somebody at A&M Records heard something and was interested, and we needed a band. Enter my brother David and the bass player Mike Brignadello.
Right.
They were living in Nashville, and I don't remember how this came about, but we needed players, and I said they're great, vouch for them. Met Alan, they came on out, and we started rehearsing, and now this is totally glossed over. We started recording in Los Angeles. We had a producer from England came over. The sessions were good. They weren't anything special. So we regrouped. They took us over to England for the summer.
Wow.
And we started recording what would be that one record, Last of the Runaways, which I think was a pretty decent record.
Great record.
Yeah. I mean, the second one, there's always one good one, and the rest, whatever. I mean, I'm not saying they're bad, but that had a core. I don't know. There's something about that one. I really appreciate that one, and I mean, the history of the band. We kind of made it ish, but it was never like this slant. We were never rock stars.
But you guys were. You had a hit and and you played all the shows. And God, what I loved about it is just what I thought was so great about the band is the arrangements. I mean, you had it wasn't jammy. It was more like parts. Yeah. And
composition.
Yeah, composition, which kind of all went away. When grunge came in, it came sort of a reaction going the other way.
Yeah.
Like everything has to be kind of ugly and
tear it down.
Yeah, tear it down. It really was. It was like a tear it all down kind of.
And to be fair, I mean, you guys, nobody can see the guys standing behind these cameras, but they're there. The other side of it is that music became almost athletic.
Sure, absolutely.
By the end of the '80s, and I think as anything becomes. Once here's the rock and roll. Once your parents start liking something, then it's time to go the other way.
Right.
So I'll never forget where I was. We were making our second record, mixing it in New York, in the city, and we were at Sony Records. We were on Sony at this time, and somebody showed, I don't know what it was. Somebody had Pearl Jam came out with their first song, Even Flow.
Yeah.
You want to see a video of a cool band? Yeah, check them out. And we were doing our record and all this shredding shit. And I'll never forget that moment. It kind of seared into my brain. Saw Eddie Vedder in that small little theater, shall we say, crowd diving, which, what? And then climbing up to the balconies
in cargo shorts and
And I thought right then, I just thought, well, that's interesting. And I'm not that interesting. I would have never thought to do that. And I just kept thinking, this is the beginning of the end. Because you've been around. I'd been around long enough. Cycles in music.
Sure.
And sure enough, that was self-fulfilling.
Right.
And that's, again, that's what led me to. That's not what led me to move to Nashville. I'd already moved to Nashville, but it's also what kind of paved the idea that if you're going to survive you got to morph and change. So that was then all of a sudden where country music that was unbeknownst to me.
Right.
I mean, even though I grew up here, it was not my cup of tea, shall we say.
Yeah.
It was like it became an option.
Right. Well, and I think
Hence
that was
the Brooks and Dunn t-shirt, yeah.
right.
Who are my dear friends.
Yeah,
I'm just going to say I love the freaking
they're
great guys.
amazing. Yeah. And I think that was probably kind of part of the beautiful serendipity of it, is that country music was evolving at the same time.
Yeah, it was.
And you were exactly the sound that people were looking for. I mean, like with, you know, Mutt and
Yes.
and when Keith Urban, you know, that was another kind of paradigm shift. The work you were doing with him.
That was about 10 years later.
Yeah.
If we're going chronologically, the 90s, we moved back here and we started raising kids. We moved back here because I thought I was going to be a rock star. We just had those hits.
Yeah,
One
right.
big top 40 hit, and then one, you know,
Yeah.
the only one I cared about was the one that had the long guitar solo intro.
You know, could you imagine? That was like a 7-minute long song, right?
Oh, those were the days.
Yeah. I mean, could you imagine getting like played out like, because it and the middle solo is great, but then it has that jam at the end that is just so orchestrated,
man.
great.
Yeah. And
Different time though. You could do that. You could have like a 7 minutes.
Well, yeah, AOR radio was really alive then, and it was.
Yeah.
I'll never forget driving down the 101, biggest LA. It was KLOS, I believe.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I'm hearing, you know, that guitar intro. If you've ever heard that.
Yeah.
And they released it like that.
Yeah.
So nobody does that. I mean, you know, obviously TikTok would have. You know, well, we've never heard it.
Yeah.
So that's so that's, you know, that was a great moment. I didn't realize this, as you know, if you live long enough, you realize that things kind of happen and they come back around. I was learning. You know, I played in the studios for about 10 years. I'm a little bit under that, and I had done so much that I you know, you get antsy, and it's like, what else is there out there to deal with? And I had no desire, no interest, no idea that I would produce records at some point. Well, the greatest lesson of being in a band was the absolute identity crisis, dealing with your own narcissism, the abject fear of living week to week on charts.
Yeah.
You know, all this stuff that you have to deal with. I mean, because basically, if people aren't coming at you, you're not succeeding.
Right.
So, fast forward, you know, I went through 10 years here in Nashville in the 90s to 2000, learning to play sessions in country music. You're right. If it was on my merits as a country guitar player, I'd have never made it. It was, again, timing. They wanted a rock sound, pop sound infused. So there was my path. And that was it was seasoned by me learning from a lot of the great session players here, Brent Mason being one of them.
Amazing.
Who you know, I could never be that, and but you could be part of that, and we learned from each other and whatnot. I probably learned more from him, to be honest. But country music ingratiated kind of what I was doing. Way late. There was James Stroud, a producer, who hired me on every one of his records. So I really owe him a gratitude, amongst the other producers. Tony Brown, you know, Hall of Fame guy, would call me in for sessions. He didn't hire the same band for every project, so he didn't hire me as much. Yeah. But then Mutt came around at the end of the 90s and started using me on records. Not the country stuff, by the way. He was using me on pop records.
Oh, really?
And he told me right off the bat, he said, when he started dating Shania Twain, he said I'll never forget the day we were in London working on a record. I'm not sure which record it was, but he said, "Do you know of this name?" I said, "Yeah, I do. I've heard she put out a record. She's pretty good, you know." And he said, "I'm dating her, and I'm going to do a record on her." I said, "You're going to do a country record?" Mutt Lange, you know, and the funny thing is, he knew more about country music than most people in Nashville did, because he grew up so hungry for that, you know, and he, you know, he was like an Everly Brothers fanatic. So he always had an acoustic guitar. Everything with Mutt started on an acoustic guitar, even the rock stuff. So
wow, that is surprising.
But he goes, when we were sitting together, And so I was thinking, oh yeah, so I guess something else I'll be doing. And he said, but I won't be using you on that. I was like, what? We were good enough friends. We were good enough friends. And he said, yeah, you don't know a thing about country music. and I thought about it. And, yeah, he's right. I really don't, because I've been skating, faking. Not faking it, but you know what I mean. And so, well, I should finish up that story real quick, because I did end up playing on all her records.
Oh,
he didn't hire me for the tracking. And then he was, this is my vindication. I can always kind of just feel like a little bit proud of myself, right? My ego cropping up. He was in the first day or the second day of tracking, and he called me up. And I'll never forget, he said, hey, Dan, what are you doing? And I wasn't doing anything that day. He said, you want to come down? He's very South African. Would you like to come down and have a play? And I said, what are you doing? I'm doing Shania's record. And I said, I thought you weren't going to hire me for that. And it was the greatest compliment.
You called him on it. Good.
Well, I had to. And he said, because I had him. And he goes, yeah, I know. He said, I need your wrist. Interesting, because rhythm guitar was a big thing for me. And so
I mean that's where you put 90% of your time.
That's it, yeah. And he realized that as his writing, and there was a certain area for me to be involved. I mean, there were other great guitar players on this project. I mean, it wasn't all. But he wanted that aspect of the rhythm playing on it. So then I did that, and that's when our relationship kind of went. That was the end of the 90s, and then he was the one who said, you should produce records.
Yeah.
That's a long answer. God,
that's a great answer.
This is not going to be on TikTok, is it? No freaking way. Yeah.
Okay, so, and then you got into producing, and who was your first, like, production, the first Nashville record you produced?
I believe...
Because I wasn't aware of it until, like, I knew you, everybody knew you as a guitar player, and we were a little surprised when it came into that. And then the Keith Urban stuff is when everybody noticed. That was a couple years in. I mean, the first thing I think I did was John and Audrey Wiggins. Oh, sure, I remember.
And they had come off a hit, and they needed another producer. And I don't think that anything that we did from our record made any noise. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And then I was able to co-produce a young artist named Chris Ward with James Stroud. He let me. I just needed experience.
Yeah.
And then I was kind of fumbling around a little bit, and then there was a guy named Shane Miner, and there was a band called Shadaisy.
Oh yeah, sure.
A trio, and Lone Star. So, and as Shane's music I thought was going to be revolutionary, and it was great, and we really did a good record. But as fate would have it, as it does all the time, the stuff that you think is going to be the thing is not the thing.
Yeah.
Lone Star, I think they were on their last leg. I think the reason I got called is because probably the record label was getting ready to drop them, and
sure, I
was probably cheaper than anybody. I mean, if the truth, whatever. And that hit on that record, or those hits. That record, and I didn't think too much about the record. I thought it was good.
Yeah.
That record, I don't know, what's sold like some 4 or 5 million records.
God, I remember that now. I totally forgot. Yeah, because they were like a little country band. John Rich was playing bass and singing, and then
he was gone by this time.
But yeah, and there was a whole switch where they became this big kind of poppy influenced band that had those huge hits.
And then Shadaisy, not the same thing. My dear friend Randy Goodman had started running the Disney label, and I had done one artist before them, and he felt I would be a fit for this trio, these sisters.
Yeah, they were cool.
And they were great.
Yeah, great singers.
And their record just went through the roof too. Yeah. So all of a sudden, in my infancy of producing records, I'd been in the studio for 20 years as a guitarist, learning from all great producers, but I was new. Yeah. So all of a sudden you hear, this is the thing you always have to be careful, people going, oh man, you're a genius, which is so freaking far from the truth, but genius is it equals money.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, that's all. That's the currency of being a genius.
Yeah.
If you make money. So as a result, this is where it got intense. This is beautiful. Mike Dungan, who was running Capitol Records at that time, before he took over all of Universal, they had had a Keith Urban record, and it had some success, but it wasn't as guitar oriented as he thought it would be. He wanted to get Keith and I together, and Keith didn't want to have anything to do with it because he hated the records. He'd heard records I produced and he didn't like them.
Really?
Yeah, and the funny thing about Keith is,
was he into Giant? Was he?
No, he wouldn't have been into Giant. No, I mean just the country records, you know.
Yeah.
And maybe I may be voicing it a little bit hard, and because Keith is probably one of the most kind artists, cheerleaders. But let's just say this:
yeah, he's amazing.
It wasn't his kind of music.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So he basically tried me out, and he set up a whole scenario to try me out on one song to see if it worked, and it worked. It was a song called "Somebody Like You."
Yeah.
He said he said you could choose the song. He said I'm going to choose the band, the studio, and the engineer. You just come in. And they had been tracking for several days. So, okay.
Yeah.
So I took my Matchless and my Gretsch.
Yeah, really?
And the song I thought was great. I mean, I chose this. I mean, Decent Instincts about a song. It was a great song.
Great song.
And we got in there, and it was like one of those things where, it dropped from the sky. It was everything was right. Again, one of those moments you have to be prepared for, but it's providence. I mean, it's just there's luck. There's all this stuff. So you never. The end of that story is that you never take your successes too much, and you don't take your failures too hard.
Right.
Because there's more than you. Right. You're a big part of it. So that started a relationship with him that I have to this day. I don't even know how much I can express my gratitude to Keith, because I learned with him growing up through the industry. And he and I were like, what is it, oil and water?
Wow.
I mean, because Keith was...
That is a huge surprise.
Oh, man, it was never a struggle, but there was intensity about our recordings, because he was a country artist, but he had this ridiculous punk rock ethic.
That's the Australian side.
That's it. Yeah, it's AC/DC, right?
Yeah.
Right. And I had this, I had this whole pedigree of pop music, and then Mutt Lange was, second to God Almighty, as far as perfection, all that stuff. And music for me was this orchestration. And so you put these two guys together, and you got a confrontation.
Yeah, but what a perfect combination. Like, okay, look at something like you, how, like, even the solo, I think Keith's playing before. I mean, he's such an incredible guitar player, and he can do everything.
Yeah.
What I love about that song is the solo is so like melodic. That da 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 da. Nothing really difficult, but like it sets it all up, and it repeats that motif, and it builds from there. And I think that was part of your influence, like to kind of to give it a little less blowing and a little more of a
composition.
Yeah, composition.
Well, that was. I mean, yeah, he got really angry. That's a great story. He got so pissed off at me.
Really? Okay.
Oh man. God.
Oh, good. Okay, good. Because I could hear like his band. What was it? The Four-Wheel Drive. The band that he was doing kind of before he got.
No, it was another name though.
It was, yeah.
What was it called?
It was Keith Urban Four-Wheel Drive, and then the Ranch.
The Ranch.
The Ranch.
Yeah.
But there was more blowing.
Oh, well, I mean,
which is exciting, but when you like that.
Well, my thing was that Keith is such a physical guitar player,
right?
And up to that point, I was more auditory, right?
Yeah,
I mean, so, and again, that's what helped us both. I mean, it's that tension between us, him pulling this way, me pulling this way, and we found a new middle, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, on that particular solo, I just had him play. I kept, because like when I hear guitar playing, every note to me is like this its own universe.
Yeah.
I mean,
sure.
that may be a little bit dramatic, but.
Well, it's the way I see it is the way you play and kind of orchestrate. Everything has intention.
Yeah.
Every note. It doesn't seem like you're just leaving it up, like your fingers just stumble somewhere.
Right.
It seems like it's.
And you could critique of that sometime would be is that you take maybe some of the danger or the spontaneity away from it. So that would be my weakness. What I would say is his weakness, it would have been in his weakness at that point, would be possibly settling for something that doesn't sting as hard as it can sting. So I was very patient at that point, just in where I was at my age. Yeah. I'd wait out a guitar solo for a day long. And just, we were on Pro Tools by that point, so you could capture all this stuff and then put it together later, But I'm listening for those moments.
Yeah.
I'm just listening. You can play this. You know this. You can play the same 5 notes, and you can play it 100 times, and it sounds different, right?
Every time.
And I'm waiting for for stars to align where that sound of that note against the backbeat there, the bass, the tone of the guitar, all the above,
right.
The way the delay hits, all these things. So I'm waiting this out, and he's just, he wouldn't mind me sharing this. He's in the studio. He's got a strap on. And we have it filmed, by the way.
Oh, really?
He filmed it. Yes, so cool. So this is not like me, and he finally he got so pissed off because I said, let's do another one. And I'm sitting there enjoying the hell out of his guitar playing and him. And I was so not reading the room. And he was getting angrier by the take. He had and basically, because he said he said, "Crikey, what the fuck do you want?" or something like that, which is, crikey got me. I never heard crikey before. And
he went Crocodile Dundee on you.
Totally. Yeah, he did that. And by this point, he had his shirt off and he's sweating. I mean, it's just so Keith Urban.
That's great.
And I was like, if you're done, you're done. I mean, I think we might have it. So that's so endearing to me, that story. Obviously, there was no damage from that, but that I would say was the strength,
right,
of both of our individualities, and so as a result, we made 6 records back to back to back.
Yeah, huge records.
And they were, it's like in learning about expectation. There's a lot of stuff that goes into all this stuff, but we spend more time talking. That was always our Achilles heel, because we would get in the studio and we just talk about life and stuff like that. Yeah. But again, you can't, life and music, it's all the same thing, or should be the same thing.
Yeah.
And so we grew. He one of the greatest. This everything pertains through my lens of guitar playing, right? So when I talk about this, but
that's what our demographic.
Okay, well,
yeah, we speak this language.
Okay, well, here's another. I would say this is a seminal thing that I learned from Keith that is stuck with me for 2 decades now. One time I was fastidious about everything, right? So the good part of my ability was that everything was put under that lens of trying to find the best extraction of feel, rhythm, all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because you're making a recording. It's not a live show.
Yeah.
It's a painting, and it's going to last, and so you want this, you get the idea.
Yeah.
And I had worked on a comp, which is, if your listeners don't know what that is, let's say 5-6 vocal passes, and then I would go through each one meticulously and find the best of the best, right?
Right.
Some people would call that cheating. To me, if you're painting, making a piece of art, you can't do that live, right? So,
right.
but when you're taking the time to record something and represent it, you want to do it the best you can, right?
Yeah.
So, and all of his stuff was very intuitive, and he sang great. But I was finding the best of the best. I gave him, and what he would do, he'd come and sing, and he'd leave because he wouldn't want to sit through that,
Yeah.
And he came back and heard a comp, and I thought he sounded freaking just great. and he goes, and again. The beautiful thing about Keith, he's incredibly articulate. And he's incredibly articulate. But when it comes to his music, that's sacred, right?
Sure.
So
yeah.
And we're close enough where it's not, we could dispense with the formalities. The comp made him angry to a degree. I mean, he wasn't violent. He wasn't throwing things.
Yeah.
And he goes. And I said, "You don't like it? You sound great." He said, "You're making me sound too good." Wow. And at first, so you can sit there and I'm hired by him, so I'm trying to please him and make his music sound great. Yeah. So a little disconcerting at first, and I was like, "What?" It's like, really? You're accusing me of making that? All of a sudden, it was about me, right? You can see where this is going. You're accusing me. Then all of a sudden, we talked, and he probably explained it more, and we ended up getting it right, whatever. But he said, "I want my music." He said, and he used this description. I thought it was a great metaphor. I think this is what I remember. I mean, he may say I didn't say that, but sure. This is what I remember, and this is what's affected me to this day, to this record that I even did. Right?
Yeah.
He said, he used a metaphor of like a train, going down a track. He said, I want it to feel like this thing it may derail at any time, because that's the performer in him, right?
Right.
He wants you to feel like you're white knuckling it. You're on a roller coaster ride. You don't want it to derail, but you want to feel that anticipation, that kind of just, and boy, that stuck with me. Like, it's still to this day.
Yeah.
So those things, you find those moments in your, we talked a little bit about Gordon and I playing and hashing out things. These moments in my life have stuck with me, and they're like seared into my musical memory, and yeah. So for him, I'm so thankful of those times. As a matter of fact, we're still even working together next week.
Oh, great.
I mean, he doesn't hire me on everything he does now. We've done so many records together, but that period of time, early 2000s. Was I mean, and I'm not discounting all the other artists that I produced, because there were a lot of other artists.
Yeah.
But that affected me. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And isn't it so beautiful how all these experiences we have, all this work, all these different things, kind of eventually it makes you kind of a fully formed musician, fully formed human being, Well,
and I mean, and you're fully formed, but you're still in that. I mean, if you're, I'm never gotten there. I've never arrived.
Right.
I'm like in discovery mode.
Work in progress.
Yes, I mean, and it's always a discovery. The hardest thing, here's the hardest part, is getting used to. I got this little fellow on my shoulder. It's always been there. That's this guy that just says, "You're a phony."
Oh,
you're not that good. And you got everybody fooled. That's not even a bad thing, right? Because it keeps you honest, and if you can live with that, a hint of I don't know, just insecurity, right?
Yeah.
That heightens your awareness, and I mean, it's like for me especially these days, all you got to do is get on Instagram.
Oh my God.
And every guitar player that I see, I just sit there. The name. There's this Brazilian guitar player.
Mateus. Oh, I saw. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. So I'm sitting there,
Where
and
that dude just flows.
Well, just
God.
I just saw something Josh Meter today too.
Oh. The fusion blonde Viking fusion guy. Oh my God.
And
yeah.
So I'm leading the interview. Sorry, I'm going somewhere. Yeah.
I like it. Yeah.
Well, I don't mean to be.
Go.
But okay. So fast forward. You get a guy my age, right? 64 years old, right? Decides. It was 63 when it was not quite a year ago when I started writing some songs for a record that I probably should have done 20 years ago. And I mean, in my youth, I was a bit of a gunslinger. I mean, but the gunslinging at that time, every generation builds up. So that gunslinging, these guys, I guarantee that guy could do what I did when he was 10 years old.
I love your humility, but I don't think so.
Well,
okay.
Dan,
I think that is. I don't think you know how great you are.
Well, I don't. That's good. That's just the point. But and I might argue on that. But I mean, it's not humility to me at this point. I mean, I'm a humble person, but I'm humbled by the fact that I realize, like, so as opposed to shying away from watching these guys, you know what I do now? I watch them more.
Right.
Not because I can, or even I like to be influenced by them. You know Andy Woods?
Oh yeah.
I watched something that he did the other day. It's like
incredible.
It's just like, can you swear on these things?
Oh yes.
Okay, I didn't know. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, because
Yes,
I'm not
yes.
I'm not one for like a lot of just cursing, but sometimes that's the only thing that works.
Yeah.
I was watching something Andy was playing, and it's like, I did it again. It's like, fuck me. It was like, but the more I dig into it, it had the other effect. As opposed to feeling like lesser, right?
Yeah.
It made me all of a sudden think, no, there's something. What I got with this thing is what I have, right? And so I don't. It takes off basically the net effect. I mean, and all you folks, whatever camera I'm looking at, I mean, if you can get to that point, hopefully it doesn't take you till you're 64 years old to come to this realization. I think those guys would have destroyed me when I was younger. Thank God there was no internet then. but I mean, I had Steve Lukather and Mike Landau to do their number on it. Yeah, but you know, that was contained at least. It was two people, you know, but it basically leads you to the point where you go, you know, the way you hear music is unique to you, and you have to at some point go, that's enough.
Right.
And you can learn from all these other guys, but you can still at the end of the day only be yourself, right?
Yeah.
And so that was. You know, it sounds like I'm promoting this record. Maybe I am, but that's where this record has been more. It means more to me because of that. Right. Because it's not. Shall we say it's not on that level of guitar proficiency, and it would have taken me. Well, I would have never gotten to that. I'd have been 70 years old by the time and lost interest. But it got to a point where I had to ask myself the hard question: is this what I meant to say? Yeah, it's exactly what I meant to say.
Okay, so tell me about the process. So you did it here, and how did you? I mean, how did you? You recorded the basics here and then added bass and drums later in a.
I literally. I mean, this is where I do all my overdubs for all the records that I produce, right?
Yeah.
And so I mean, this is the spot, and I have a good guitar setup, and Derek had brought me in this Revv amp to try out.
Yeah, the D40. Okay.
And I figured, well, I'm going to write a song today. So I took a guitar, and I think what it was. Boy, I don't even see it now. That was that Jazzmaster. I love the jazz, way in the back over there.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I think I had, it was either that or that blue Strat. I didn't have this guitar, the 64 Strat that I used through most of my sessions.
All of it, yeah.
I mean, this was hanging on the steps coming up here. I hadn't hardly played this guitar in 20 years.
Really?
Yeah, because the music I was making wasn't, you know, it just wasn't the thing. You know, so just sitting there as a relic. You know.
Yeah.
So anyway, so it may have been this guitar, but I think it was that blue one or the Jazzmaster. This amp, and I had a Supermoon pedal that Keith gave me because I liked it on one of his songs.
Huh.
So, and that was it. Maybe I had pulled out the dual overdrive. Probably hadn't done that at this point. So it was no pedal board, nothing. And I found some grooves. I just perused drum grooves.
Yeah, like on Logic or something like that.
Well, I know I used Pro Tools, but it was just I had libraries.
Yeah.
Found something that appealed to me. That was it.
Yeah.
And the irony is the first song on the record, which is called Colorado Creepin'. I couldn't just call it creeping. It sounds like creeping to me, but that sounds creepy.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
what the hell?
Right,
the trench coat and all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
So anyway, but I that groove, I just like that slow groove, and I just started.
Let's hear that a little bit. Sure.
It was just the. That basically.
Yeah.
And that was really, I mean, so I had it in record mode. Normally I go into a big Bogner cabinet in my main locker, guitar amp locker that's, you can kind of feel it through the floor, but it's in a garage, off a garage. And for this one, I don't know why, but I plugged the Revv, I have a vocal booth over here, you can't see it, but there were a couple small open back cabinets.
Yeah.
And to this day, I don't know why I did this, but I thought, what the heck, I'd just plug it into one of those. Maybe because I wanted to run at 4 ohms or whatever. and it was in a little Walter cabinet.
Yeah.
And so I mic'd it up in the vocal booth, and then I just started playing. I recorded that little bit, and I probably didn't even play it through the whole song because I didn't know what the song was going to be.
Sure.
And so I played that, and then figured, okay, what does that mean? So I'm sitting there, and then I thought. That little bit, right?
Yeah.
It probably didn't come out all like that. I probably just messed with it, right?
Yeah.
It's got a little Jeff Beck, whatever.
Yeah, that's that tension, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was writing and I was demoing is what I was doing.
Yeah.
And just fleshing things out, no expectations. This was song 1, right? That's what it was called, song 1. And
it's a creative title.
Perfect title. Yeah. The hardest part was naming the songs after the record because it was song 1 through 10. And so that was it. With no more expectations, put it to bed, listened on my iTunes on my iPhone the next day. 1 rhythm guitar part, drums, no bass, and I liked it. And it's like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. Maybe, and again, it may have been 2 days later, whatever it was, and I just repeated the process.
Right.
And that's really what happened. So the idea was I had these, once I this is probably a month into it, right? Because I didn't write every consecutive day. But I kept thinking, if I can write something that makes me interested, maybe I have a little something here. And my dear friend and, guitarist that I admire and have used as a session player on my projects, Tom Bukovac.
Oh, Book's amazing.
We all know how great.
You kind of got, you're the guy that kind of brought Tom up a notch,
Well, I mean, I hired him, you know what I mean, because he was great, so that was easy, But
he's a little under the radar until you started hiring him all the time. And
somebody else would have got him.
You're right.
I was there, I recognized, I mean, it didn't take a genius to recognize how great he is, but, and he was saying you should do this. So all these things are in my mind, and there's no formulation of a project at that point.
Right.
But suffice it to say, enough happened to where it was like, oh, this is great. I recorded 10 demos, and I thought, well,
just kind of like that. Just built them right here.
Yeah.
Start of the groove.
Yeah, so I'm a record producer at this point,
Yeah.
And so my demos sound pretty good, and I it's like I basically, it's everything we talked about it before. Everything for me is compositional. So if I'm listening to music, I want to hear a story. I want to hear valleys and peaks and I want to hear a song the way I kind of intuitively feel. I want to be taken on a journey. So I would hold it up to that kind of light. And if something wasn't right, I'd come back and it's like use another guitar. It doesn't matter. That was just. And so along the way, I would also play some solos. Because there's a solo section.
Yeah.
And again, the way I think is like I'm still hearing melodies. Everything is a melody. Even when I'm jamming,
sure.
Like what I'll hear, like when I would produce another guitar player, I'm hearing bits of spontaneity, but I'm also still wanting to hear the melody. I don't want to just hear blowing.
Right.
I want to feel something from a melodic standpoint. And if to be fair, if I screwed it up, I'd punch it in. Because my chops weren't really that great at that point because I hadn't been playing that much for about 20 years. So your hands go. But so fast forward, I all of a sudden I got something. I really think I have something. I sent it to Tom, and he said, I think you got some. People would be really interested in hearing that, and I needed to hear that.
Yeah.
So I'm leaving out a lot of stuff, but I booked a bass player and a drummer, and Mark Hill and Jerry Rowe, who played on tons of sessions.
Sure.
And my idea was that I was going to use a bunch of my friends. That was the original idea.
Yeah.
And which has become a sore point because I told a couple people I would use them, and then I retracted, not intentionally. They digested all this stuff and they got it done in 2 days. It was like, that's the record. I mean, and they really studied it. Mark charted it out, and Jerry he has like this ridiculous memory. So it's basically some demo guitars, bass, and drums.
So really the tracks you did here, they just played to it and blew it all down.
We went down the street at a place called the Castle, place I started recording when I was 19 years old.
Yeah.
And it's not too far from here. We went over there, and my dear friend and guy's mixed 98% of the records I've done, Justin Ebank, said he wanted to come and record it. And he was interested in it just because we've been friends. It's like, yeah, Dan, you should play guitar. And I told him kind of what I said, my sense is, because all the music led me towards this, everything I was writing just kept going back to that time period, 75 to 80, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, some of the titles are reflective of that, you know, I mean, it's just all the inside stuff, but it's what we talked about the other day. But I wanted the record to sound kind of, to me, the record that I remembered most fondly was Wired.
Oh, man.
And it was
total game changer.
Small sound. The drums weren't big, you know.
Yeah.
Guitars were loud, you know, but it really allowed what was being played to be heard, you know.
Right.
And Justin was totally in that. So he recorded it just like that, and it's like, it sounded really good at the studio. I was so thrilled with it. And blown away just because of what these guys brought to it. And so next step was to come back here, strap on the big time stuff, right?
Yeah, right.
Grab the Bogner with the great amp, and I'm going to go down to the 412, and I'm going to start playing the shit out of this stuff. And I'm going to make, you know, and
right.
I started doing that, and the overwhelming effect is that it didn't have. I think I probably noticed it a day in. It just didn't sound. I kept going back to the demo guitar part. And so you can see where this is going. It was like, okay, well, if it's not going to sound better, can't beat them, join them. Well, I had to fix some of the because there was some pretty rank stuff in the middle of it. I mean, there's.
Well, you know, sure, when you're, you know,
riding,
it's just, blowing it down.
So, and if I had to fix it, I didn't document a thing. So I had to, but luckily I wasn't using a lot of different gear, so it wasn't that hard, right?
Yeah.
And
you know, like matching tones and stuff like that.
And even if it didn't match, I thought, well, it's my project. I can do whatever I want, right? Yeah. I'm not. It's not like I'm trying to, you know, go out and sell, you know, or stream 2 billion streams. No, you know, this is going to be a very limited audience here.
Yeah.
So it's like I had to get out of my head and just have fun. And so that's really what happened. I got the guitars to where I felt like they were presentable, and got my friend Gordon Mote and Eric Darkin. Gordon Mote's a keyboard player, had some keys on some songs and some percussion on songs. They just aced it. And then Chris Wilkinson, my dear friend, and who writes a lot of string charts for me on you know, my records that I produce. I told her that I had a certain idea. I'd like to have 2 strings sessions, you know, or 2 songs with strings on them. And I said, I really love this string writer named Claire Fisher, who used to write. He was a jazz pianist who used to write for Prince.
Wow.
And I said, do you know the names? She said, I know them, but she did a deep dive. I said, I like that kind of stuff. I like small sections, and I like this kind of harmonic value. And I went over to her place, played this. She chose the 2 songs that she wanted to do, and then we went and recorded that stuff. Same thing over at the Castle.
Wow.
And that's the record, you know? I mean, it's like, and so it's, you know, I mean, for people who choose to want to listen to it, they're going to hear a pretty honest and not very imperfect record. But when I say imperfect, I mean it's you know, it's like it's me. There's no doubt it's anybody else.
Wow.
You know?
So the whole cast is you, a bass player and a drummer, and then some strings on a couple songs.
And a little bit of keyboards here, and a little bit of percussion here. I mean, you know, again, the more you get into it, it's like, you know, yeah, you can program percussion, but you want that feeling.
Oh,
Eric Darkin's just he's staggeringly good, and Gordon Mote, the same thing. It was begging for humanity.
Yeah.
And so,
that's a good way to put it.
And so just one thing led to another. Ended up using, you know, like all of a sudden it was like I grabbed this guitar, and because it's got all the mid boost stuff like that, you know, you can dial in, like, well, here I can do it on this one. This is the Tyler graciously made me a copy of this guitar. they felt it was time, I guess. And,
Yeah.
and so it's basically the same guitar, but like,
And you use Tyler's back.
oh, I've always had.
Yeah, always have.
Jim Tyler was the one who did this configuration of this guitar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this was a mint pristine 64 Strat, everything original, not a scratch on it. And he did that. So that was my relationship with Jim.
Yeah.
But so like for instance,
So what's all going on there?
well, okay, so what it is obviously this is tone right here. This tone right here is a mid boost.
Oh.
Volume. Each pickup, I'm pretty remedial in my description of these, but these tap pickups.
Okay.
Down is louder. That's what I say. Up is softer. This push-pull adds this pickup, so you can conceivably have front and back, which you couldn't have with a 5 selection. This push-pull takes all this mid boost out of the circuit.
Oh, wow.
Which is helpful, but I never do it. So
Yeah.
But I can if I want. But the mid boost for me was something like if you're just sitting here. I have these Vertex. Great little preamps. They're very subtle, but one is just a preamp. The other one is just a slight little. It's called the Ultra Phoenix. Slight little overdrive, like when you play a note, right? Crank on the Ultra Phoenix, and this is dime, so it's very subtle. Okay, so now if you can get. You can play so gently, right? Right. So, but you turn this thing. Especially when you get up in here.
Wow.
You hear the difference, right?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
just a little more saturation, because when you're down here, if you put this on, it's not too. It doesn't fart out, but but as you get up the neck, you don't have to put in distortion pedals.
Sure.
Unless you want more of that 80s type shit that I do to cover up my imperfections. But so the guitar, it cleans up so beautifully. Like you can
Oh yeah.
right? You hear that little bit of sheen on it.
Oh yeah.
And that was something that I also found out. This was the 80s sound, right? I mean, this is like chorus and delays everywhere.
Right.
When the mid boost is in the circuit and you have it down to 0, it adds this little top end thing that ended up paying for my mortgage. You know? That's what it was. So I didn't know anything about it at that time. And that's the secret sauce of this guitar. I mean, it plays great. Rich Rankin over at Tyler, what they did, I guess, out of a memorial for Jim, who was so ahead of his time, they just wanted to make a version of this, which we always thought was a 63, but it was 64. We find out, and they're marketing it with a Floyd Rose, like it was what I used to use.
Okay.
But
what do you have on there? Was that the
Wilkinson?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, this is thanks to Nashville. I didn't need a Floyd Rose anymore. A lot easier. I don't do that many dive bombs, so.
No, but you get this great. I mean, you're always kind of bending into the note, and it's almost kind of that. The way that Jeff Beck would just kind of slide into everything is so like a singing voice, and that's. I mean, so I think between your hand bends and your whammy bar work, it's just so.
Fluid. For 20 years, I don't have any. Well, I guess the Gretsch has a whammy bar on it. But this was a big part of my expression that I'm just going a different direction, right? I had a day job.
Yeah.
So and I've rediscovered it, and it's, of course I would go see Jeff Beck play, and he was using a standard, right? I mean,
right.
So the Floyd Rose was great in the 80s.
Sure.
But I mean, you got to lock the nuts and all that kind of stuff. It's just a lot of pain was what it is. So this Wilkinson it's just got a nice, beautiful little lovely touch, and it's kind of been home base for me. And I didn't, when I was doing this project, I didn't have this guitar because it wasn't made.
Yeah.
They'd actually torn this thing apart sometime during that time, and they had the idea to manufacture it. But so I ended up, because I needed to play some solos, and all of a sudden, you know, I didn't want the record to be sleepy. I needed a little bit of giddy up and go. And
sure.
So I pulled the guitar off the wall and figured, what the hell? And just.
Oh, really? So you that thing was basically retired, and you just.
Every once in a blue moon, somebody would say, "Can you play a solo like Days of Yore?"
Yeah.
And so I'd grab it out. But no, this was sitting idle for 20 years.
Wow.
So since 2000.
Yeah.
Yeah, 25 years.
God.
So it was like, it became my new discovery in a connection with life. And I used very little. You know, I used the Supermoon. I used the, what's this called? The Dual Overdrive SD2.
Yeah.
I was sitting in my closet of pedals that just isn't there. And I had this great pedal board that Tom Bukovac sold me, but it was so big and heavy, I didn't feel like, and it was dangerous. It had all these sharp edges, so I wasn't going to pull that out.
Thanks for nothing, Tom.
Yeah,
yeah.
And well, you know, Tom is the greatest source of guitars, you know. So,
everything, yeah.
But it was, so yeah, again, I can laugh about my naivete on equipment, but there was something that was freeing, going back to the demo idea, that it wasn't about choosing, well, should I use the Fender amp? Should I use this guitar?
Right.
You're going into your creative mode, and not the technical mode.
Yeah.
And which I didn't realize, but that was the most liberating thing.
Sure.
Because the second you start thinking that, oh, if I just use this pedal, use this guitar, or this amp, then you're remiking the thing. You know, it's like you're not doing the essence.
Right.
Which is still your hands. You know.
Sure.
So that was the beautiful discovery. Plus, the nice thing was that the first thing when I played the record for Tom, I don't think I had played it for anybody at this point. I sent him some roughs, and Tom, who I consider like just the epitome of tone worthiness, right? Everything he does is just like killer. And Tom said, "Man," he goes, "Dude, your tones," and I wasn't even thinking along those lines. And I to be honest, I've always been a little bit insecure about my tones. I would sit with Mike Landau all the time, and I kept thinking, how come my guitar doesn't sound as good as him? But that's when somebody makes you. I think we said this when we were talking the other day. When somebody makes coffee, the same coffee maker, it always tastes better. Right?
Right. It's a good way to put it.
I mean, there's something about it. So I know that was probably, it's just, you know, it's not you is what it is.
Yeah.
So when he said that, it was like, yeah, it does sound pretty good, right?
Right.
And all that, all of a sudden, everything kind of came full circle. It's like, yeah, you find something that helps you represent what you're going to do. Yeah. And my little new buddy, the Revv D40, I freaking love this thing. I mean, because the Matchless is undeniably one of the greatest amps made. You know, that thing, I've had that thing since
high mileage on that
90.
amp.
I've had that thing since 90.
Wow.
And, you know, and so I'm very picky on, I don't use that many amps. I got a bunch sitting around, but I basically use 2 or 3. And this thing kind of came into my life, and it became a thing.
Yeah.
And kind of the thing. If I ever go out and play some that's live, that's what I'm going to do it on. You know?
Okay, so, and just a couple of pedals on the floor. How did you get your delays and stuff? I mean,
The delays were in the box.
Okay. What strings are you running?
These are D'Addario NYXLs.
And the D'Addario NYXL.
But they're D'Addario strings, and I've been using those since forever, and I love them.
D'Addario strings as well.
D'Addarios. Right.
D'Addario. I've been using D'Addario.
I'm a fan of D'Addarios.
Started using these D'Addarios. I like the D'Addario NYXLs.
These are D'Addario, and I got the NYXLs on here.
Okay, so I think you and Chet Atkins sort of have parallel lives, because I think Chet, much like you, sort of fell into the production thing or was kind of pointed in that direction, but he just wanted to play guitar.
Yeah.
I mean, he was just an incredible guitar player, and that's sort of what he chased his whole life, and encouraged his friends and all that. So Tell me about this Chet Atkins guitar of yours, and what's the story behind?
Boy, this guitar. First of all, I didn't know anything about Gretsch guitars. During my let's say my session career period in Los Angeles, just at least, it was pretty much this Strat.
Sure.
I would say 98% of the time. I mean, I had other guitars, but I never touched an acoustic guitar. I never touched anything. Fast forward to Nashville, you know, even though a lot of people wanted me to do the carryover, right? So hence the Chorusy and the Strat and all that stuff. It was great. But I was intrigued. I started getting around other guitar players and hearing these other tones. I was late to the party, right? Late to the whole idea of tones. And I think one day, it was probably in the 91 or something like that, I just thought, I saw somebody, it wasn't because of Chet. Now, I did go see Chet when I was 13 years old, too.
Yeah.
Sitting on the front row at...
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Cool. How cool.
This is right before Sherry and I got together, so it was Carla Polk. I think that was the name, the girl that I took sat front row, arm around the girl, watching Chet Atkins. I was hogging. But, and the other Chet Atkins, that has nothing to do with this, too. He also got the shit taken out of him. When I started producing records, the critics were relentless that I was ruining country music.
Yeah.
They did the same. I found out they did the same thing with Chet with his Cosmopolitan.
The Countrypolitan thing.
Countrypolitan.
They thought it was like, you know, like heresy.
That's so
much parallel experience.
Yes. And so to be mentioned, thank you. That's to be mentioned in that same sentence with Chet Atkins. The guitar, I didn't know anything about Gretsch's. I just knew that I'd heard something, and I can't remember what it was, or I'd seen somebody play something, and I thought, oh, that's a cool tone. So I called my dear friend Dan Green, who worked at Gruen's at that time. I said, I need a Gretsch. And so I was too lazy to go and shop, right? So he knew me. He's known me since I was a teenager, and he came by the studio. I was working with Martina McBride at that time, and he brought this guitar down. I saw this. I said, "What the heck?"
Yeah, right.
I didn't know anything about it. And anyway, so I got the guitar, and it's like an acoustic guitar. I was playing 9s at this point.
Wow.
And these are like 11s, you know.
Yeah.
And so, this one hadn't been played in a bit, right? So, anyway, so the story goes, they brought it down to, it was the Money Pit recording studio. I had my matchless amp there, and I was really pumped. You know, I'm going to play a Gretsch.
Yeah.
Felt it. It's like, this doesn't feel like anything I've ever played. But I bought it, and he also said, you know, it has the fake F holes. He said it'll feel a little bit more like like the electrics you're used to, maybe, you know.
Yeah.
And I was like, whatever. I don't care. It's different, you know.
Yeah.
And so I got it there at the studio, and I kept switching all these knobs, and the thing wouldn't work. I said, Dan, I called him back up. I said, this thing doesn't work. He said, did you check this switch out? There's an on and off. Right? Let's see. Did I get it right, or have I? There it is.
Yeah, there we go.
There's a mute switch.
Which seems like a terrible idea, right?
Well, I guess back in the day, whatever. But the story about this guitar was this took me to another place, right? So as a guitar player who had never played, I never played Firebirds, Flying V's, none of that stuff. I was a Strat guy, maybe a little Les Paul. This was a different voice. Even the feel of this thing made me play differently.
Sure.
And it was, playing solos on it, forget that for the first year.
I bet.
But this is all, the guitar, so I used it on some of Martina's recording, and it in this down in the
oh yeah,
it just has
great.
Probably with a little bit of it. It just has a little bit of spank, right?
Right.
I mean, of course, we all saw the Stray Cats, and I couldn't play that kind of guitar. This is the guitar we were talking about Keith Urban when I was being auditioned for this one track. I God knows why I took a Gretsch. I took this in a matchless down there. Wow. Well, probably because I figured Keith was going to play his Tele. So,
yeah.
And this ended up being, like the rhythm guitar on that song.
Really?
And it just, by that point, now this was, 10 years later.
Yeah.
But I had kind of developed an affinity for this thing. And it I didn't use this on my record at all because I don't think I had any parts for it. But it just has a voice that took the way I would normally play guitar. It didn't allow me. I couldn't do the same old, same old. Everything I did on this thing made me struggle. And there was some utility to that, and I found some new tones. I mean, like the great thing I've used this on is this tone. What do you? I don't even know what you call
mud
this.
switch.
The mud switch,
yeah.
perfect. Yeah, when you have a little bit of distortion on this, all of a sudden it's like a throat sound.
Yeah.
You know. So anyway,
It's almost that woman tone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, if I really wanted to, and I kept 11s on this just so that I wouldn't be tempted to try to play it like I would play my Strat.
Right.
And so, yeah, this guitar, I mean, this thing has been on, I can't tell you how many records. Because even, you know, when I say I didn't play guitar, I always play guitar.
Yeah.
Just not solos.
Yeah, you're the hands-on producer who is.
And
doing it.
there's something in the music I was making in Nashville. Remember, I was learning. It was expanding my whole idea of what music was. So consequently, the distortion pedals go out the window. I quit using effects. Period. You know, I mean, I used that matchless and maybe a little delay or something like that, but that was about it.
Yeah.
So the Tele, Keith sent me that Tele, which is a replica of the one that he uses.
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and all these.
And this is the one he took the neck out of his, didn't he? Is this the one that?
He actually has, because I was with him the other day. I can't believe I never asked him. There was he had a middle pickup for it.
Oh, okay.
And it's just it's a cavity, but this is the same guitar, same year. It's just just a little more well preserved.
Yeah.
Heavy. It's
not
like
the same mileage that his has on it.
And I will say, so like again, me and Telly's never coexisted, so I learned how to play that thing. A big one to me, if you're grabbing guitar.
Oh, sure.
Here's the one that probably in the last 10 years is that Rick. Tom, that's a Tom Bukovac find for me.
Oh, wow.
And again, I would never have played a guitar like that in the 80s.
God, right.
Unknown to me. The feel of it, it feels awkward, and yet it's one of the most expressive, like the Gretsch. There is no place to hide.
Wow.
Yeah, you can hide on the the Strats because they're kind of hot rodded. This thing makes you play like a man.
Huh.
I mean, these pickups. I don't even know what they call these things, but they show every lack of technique that you have.
Yeah.
and it is.
Well, keep this away from me.
Yeah, well, that's what, but if you want, I mean, for guitar players, I'm not a collector. I don't have hundreds of guitars.
Yeah, this is all utilitarian.
I use them, and they each have a voice that I found out, and even as important as that, I feel like that these guitars make you rethink what you do.
Yeah.
And this thing became like my go-to for about 5 years.
Wow.
And even playing them like not on my solo stuff, but on records that I was working on, I started playing solos on this thing. I think there probably feel like 10s on that thing.
Yeah, it feels pretty unforgiving.
Yeah, it's totally unforgiving. Not only in the way the guitar feels, but in the way that it sounds. But again, it made me think differently on the guitar. It's not a shredding. There's no.
Right.
Like I've always said that when to my closest friends, if you want to know when I've run out of ideas, right, I just start playing faster. You can't do that on this thing because you'll be so exposed, and nor on this thing. Yeah. So all this stuff is really, it was part of my kind of trajectory of learning how to play the guitar again.
Wow. And
then also it made me run back to Mama,
Right. Well, and it's interesting because your old '64 Strat, just like Landau's old Strat and Luke's old Strat, they're all old Strats that have, I think, EMGs in them and have been rewired and kind of reworked.
Right.
That was sort of that's what you guys were doing.
Well, and it's for that style, that's
you can't do it any other way.
No. But when you take that, whatever that was, and then you start imposing on this, you have to struggle, and you have to come up with a bit of a new vocabulary, or at least a different slant on what you would normally do.
Sure.
and growth.
Yeah, and I think Miles Davis was saying that to a certain extent, your limitations become your style. You know, like if you get on something that limits you,
Yes.
it will put you in a different. You know, it'll kind of help you find what's inside, maybe, because you can't, like you said, you can't play fast.
Right.
On these kind, you have nowhere to hide.
Nope, no, and there's, you know, to bring that kind of full circle, the struggle.
Right.
That friction, that's where the stuff is, man.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's like, it's unavoidable in life.
Yeah, like when you don't know if you're going to stick the landing. When you're listening to somebody, you think, oh, man.
That's it. That's it. So all these guitars represent that to some degree. On my 60th birthday, that Jazzmaster was at my door. Right, because it was.
Yeah, the Sunburst?
2020.
This guy?
Yeah, we were right in the.
Oh,
I had COVID that morning. I remember that.
Oh, congratulations!
Yeah, on my 60th birthday, and I walked to I walked past the front door, and there was a package, a guitar case. I get a little call, and this is again Keith Urban, very very sweet, and
what a great dude.
He said, "I found you a guitar that was made on your birthday."
Oh, God.
And again, I know that's on this record. I just can't remember what song that was, but it's a little closer, obviously, to the Strat, so it feels a little bit more like home. It's still more unforgiving,
right?
But the pickups, they're low output, and they make you play differently. It's just a great accent. So you know, all these guitars have kind of just given me different voices.
Right. You know, it's interesting. We did a rig rundown with Larry Carlton, and I was shocked.
Who's that?
Yeah. That kid's good. You got to check him out. Right?
Jeez.
Yeah, but I was shocked at how few guitars he had. He had like maybe 6, and he's like, yeah, you know.
Yeah.
I had this with Joni Mitchell, and they were all very specific.
Can we just? I mean. We could do it. Well, I've already talked too much, but can I just say how much I idolize that man?
Oh man, God.
I mean.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He is the gold standard.
Yeah. I don't know how else to put it other than well, I mean, you know, if you hear my playing, you're hearing a big dose of that man.
Yeah.
And just since I was, you know, I mean, I know where I was when I heard Room 335.
Yeah.
That was another moment.
Well, and again, like that Steely Dan stuff, the fact that they could just kind of meander and go almost like with Giant, you could have a 6-minute song of that, like that's kind of like a movie.
Yeah.
You know, and I can see, you can see the DNA kind of all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you know, whether you collect them or not, or even in my case, whether you know that much about them, it still has to go through that funnel of you, and you got to pick the damn thing up and play it, you know. So, you know, I stick with fewer so I don't embarrass myself. But it's all these guitars. They all have kind of a story.
Yeah, but this is an incredible story.
Oh man,
what a thoughtful gesture on your birthday to have your birthday guitar.
He probably didn't want to come and get COVID. That he would have probably brought it himself.
Yeah, right.
But isn't? I mean, you know. So that obviously that means a great deal to me.
That's beautiful, man.
I mean, all the instruments are, and I play again. It's like you can grab each one and find a way to put them into the music that you're doing, and it may not be what you expected. That's the gift of these instruments.
Right.
I think. You know, I just realized this thing. I didn't even know that somebody. Either one of my grandkids chewed that off or something like that.
Well, it is like 60 years old, so.
Do you know what year this would be?
No, but it's not a kid. Yeah. I got a feeling it's been around a while.
Yeah, I love this thing. I absolutely love this thing, and I've grown to love. Whoever the hell thought of that?
Yeah,
the belt buckle, that's hilarious.
Right?
Yeah. Nothing behind the curtain there.
And before we started, you were talking about you were cutting like right here with those monitors and not even headphones, just at a low volume. Is that kind of how you recorded?
Yeah, I've noticed at a certain threshold that I don't think my tinnitus is still under control. I mean, I have a
Well, I think we all
do. Yeah.
Yeah. At this point,
but years of producing records. I mean, you got to preserve your ears.
Sure.
So for years, I had these two little NHTs sitting over here because there was a desk here. A mixing board, and I'd put them right about this proximity to my ears, and I just turn them up. I mean, it's just like you put headphones, but not increasingly loud. And I realized detail I could hear so much better.
Sure.
So I don't listen that loud when I play. And I also notice that if I listen too loud, I play really flat. I don't know why.
Huh.
But so especially when you get up into the high registers.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just so I can, because of the ISO booth, I can crank everything as loud as I want to.
Sure.
And I like actually hearing the rumble.
Yeah.
I like, when I used to play live with our band, I could never stand hearing the speaker, like some people speakers up high.
Yeah.
It would make my hands tighten up.
Really?
I had to hear like it coming through my legs.
Huh.
There's something, it was too honest or something like that.
Yeah.
But so I always like to hear just a little bit of the rumble, and I don't listen to myself that loudly.
Huh.
Because then I can really hear what I'm doing,
Right. And you're definitely going to be locked in with everybody else. Like sometimes I'll hear people that are recording their mix is just them, and they can't really, jive with everything else.
It's all relational. I mean,
Yeah.
to me, and this is the one thing that helps about producing records for so long. The hard part about being a producer and playing an instrument is that you kind of know what you're playing before it comes out,
Right.
and then you judge it really quickly. The best thing is, because you want to let somebody perform.
Yeah.
Once you kind of get past that, and again, I found out because I was doing demos, I wasn't holding myself to any kind of high accountability. It was great.
Yeah, how liberating. If you're thinking there's no pressure, this is just a demo.
No. So that was the secret sauce. I mean, and to be fair, I said this earlier. I did go in and fix stuff. I mean, I'm not that good. I mean, if you like something, there's. I do have pride.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I tell this is a funny little anecdote. There was one song, I'm not going to say what it is because that's too revealing. We'd mastered the record. They had already done
Sequence mastered, done.
They had already done the, I can't remember when you cut the first vinyl, whatever the acetate, right?
Yeah.
And we resequenced the record, and there's a song that I originally thought was going to be near the end of the record. I just didn't really care that much about it. And I heard it, and the song came to a more prominent space. And I thought, well, that solo doesn't end very well. How did I let that go by? It was like this. It really had some nice moments, and it was like, well, that sucks. I mean, it just sucked. It did for me. And so I was out in Colorado. My oldest daughter and one of my newest grandsons and her husband, they live out there, so we have a small place out there. And all I had was a laptop, because if I go out there and I still have to work, I still And I had a Tyler guitar, what they call it, the Studio Elite. It's really cool. It's the only guitar I have out there. I don't even have an amp. And I just thought, you know what? I gotta dismount this solo better. So it took me forever to dial a tone that sounds like it was like the same tone.
What did you record into?
Just Pro Tools on the laptop.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I used the Scuffum amps, whatever it is. I mean, distortion is distortion, right?
Yeah.
So again, it's slightly different, but again, what does it matter?
Right.
If it's different, nobody says it has to be the same, right?
Yeah.
And so that was a really expensive guitar lick. I think it was 2 bars.
Oh God.
And since I financed the record, I didn't, that was the deal. So I paid all the bills on this thing, right? So I had to mix this song, remaster it, and then repress the vinyl.
Oh man.
That's an expensive. I don't think is it. And I told my wife about it, and I told her And she just looked at me. You know,
Like-
of course, we've been together for so long. She was like, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
I
right,
said, that's
right.
going to be, she said, does it really make a difference? I said, to me it does.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Totally worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, just one last thing I wanted to ask you. When you're out playing around town, when you go, just do something.
Which I haven't done in a long time.
Yeah, yeah. You don't we're like, okay, for instance, when Toddzilla had the
Oh, yeah.
with the fundraiser, the Thrilla for Toddzilla.
Yeah, I remember that.
And you played there with Giant. What do you bring for like a throw and go thing like that? Like,
The only thing I took, because they had a back line.
yeah.
The hardest thing was rehearsing those damn songs and learning those songs. But this is the only thing I took. I took the line 6 there. That was it.
That was it.
It was my pedalboard, and we didn't sound check.
Oh my God.
So it was like, yeah.
It was killer. And
Were
it
you
was
there?
No, no.
Oh, it's on.
Yeah,
internet,
it's I mean, everything is everywhere. You can't
Yes,
play.
yeah.
You can't, Dan. You can't play anywhere, and it's not going to end up everywhere.
Yeah, my worst nightmare, but
Yeah,
it is
yeah.
what it is, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that was no. I recently done a gig before that, maybe a year or something like that, and just a guest, and same thing. It's like this thing just has has distortion in it and reverb and some delay. What more do you need?
Yeah, right.
I don't know how to program it like some of my friends. Derek Wells, great guitar player here in
Yeah.
town. He knows this thing beyond what I can imagine. So I mean, but that's still the thing. You got an amp, whatever you got, and
Right.
just throw a little juice on it, and it should be about enough.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, tone is, and that's the other thing. I learned tone. There is no one tone.
Right. Oh yeah.
If it's not a great tone, just turn it up a little bit louder.
Right. Well,
right?
and isn't that something like maybe what sounds like a great tone in the room, in a mix is completely wrong. There's
Absolutely.
too much bottom end, or doesn't
Yeah.
cut right, or doesn't have its an ugly tone might just find a perfect spot.
Oh man.
Yeah.
You know who the master of mid-range is Joe Walsh.
Oh yeah, man.
I mean,
he's a genius all the way around.
it's in his tones. If you really, it's not. It's like you compare it to the Brown sound of Eddie, right?
Right.
You would say at first blush, it would be encapsulated by Eddie's sound. But you got to remember, Eddie's sound was based on less bass and smaller drums. That guitar, it lived in that space, right?
Yeah.
And in the ensembles that Joe plays in, it's the mid-range is what speaks, right?
Oh, right.
So
Oh,
your
oh,
touch, and Tom told me some stories about on the road with Joe too.
That's right.
Taking amps, and that is the key for like when you hear recordings. It's like doing crosswords. You got, let's just call that sound, right?
Yeah.
You got your bass, you got your kick drum, maybe sits a little bit higher than it, you got your snare drum. Well, so we've already limited where the guitar is going to sit. Does it sit here? Does it sit here? If you sit it down here, you're going to obscure the bass,
Right.
and you're going to obscure the kick drum. So it's like find out where it speaks the best. I mean, for me, if it gets too bright, it kind of makes my ears hurt.
Sure.
And but if you listen, like one of the other records that I didn't mention that affected me through my whole musical career was "So What" by Joe Walsh.
Right. Was Life's Been Good on that?
Nope. That had the. I don't know if it had any big hits on it. It was "Turn to Stone" was on that record.
Huh.
But but Book knows that record inside and out, and that record is a study in guitar playing. I mean, there's a song that I can't remember. There's titles elude me, but there's a solo on this thing. They were experimenting with. They flipped the tape to get that backwards type thing.
Right.
Still one of my favorite guitar solos, and unfortunately, if anybody's interested, they'll just have to go to it and find it.
Yeah. Dig through that whole catalog.
Is it Country Fair? I don't know. Anyway, but that is something. And again, I mean, I'm gonna that amp just naturally sits there. It's not like and especially when I was using it with that open back 212, it didn't have all that rumbly type stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it just found that throat. It's a throat. It's not bridle. It's just not like big 412.
Yeah.
And then all this stuff. I personally, I will say this, like I didn't have a pedal board for at least. Well, I had them. I never used them, right?
Yeah.
All the rack stuff that had gone away with the 90s. But obviously you gotta have a little delay. I like just a pinch of reverb, so that Supermoon's great. The thing that I love, the overdrive is great. I mean, the Boss, I think it was because I asked Mike Landau what he was using with James Taylor. I want to think he said Boss.
Yeah.
So that was enough for me, because I heard him play live one time at the arena here in Nashville. I said, God, your solo sound is so freaking ridiculous. And all he was using a little Fender.
Yeah, he's got a little signature Fender.
Yeah. And it was like the most beautiful solo. Of course, it's his playing, but but he was telling me how he ran it. He said I ran my treble on my guitar at about 2, and he said I run my volume at about 4 or 5.
Wow.
I had never done that, and it was like
shocking.
And he said I run the pedal, and I want to say it was Boss. It didn't matter. I mean, whatever it was going to sound good. And so I thought, well, I'll try that, Yeah. And I found that with this little pedal. But what I since built upon, and why this pedal board is kind of something that I really like, is Vertex. Mason Marangella brought these pedals just for me to try out.
Yeah.
And they're so subtle.
Yeah.
But different, like what I found out in my playing nowadays, I used to like much more saturated tone. Again, it was kind of hiding, and now I like it to be so that I can, it really is touch sensitive, so I can bang it and feel something moving me. And if I need the distortion a little extra, I got this, or I got the Boss pedal. Yeah. But I want to find it, if I can possibly find it with a lot less gain. And then the amp has 2 stages, so you can see the second stage on this thing. I kind of run. What do I do here? I run it a little bit more. For instance, for me, a big test these days is to start on the neck pickup.
Sure.
I'll get.
Yeah.
See that right there, right? And then and if I need a little bit more. It's just the master volumes I got a little bit screwed up, but you get right. Of course, then you got to readjust the Supermoon and all that kind of stuff. But you get the idea.
Yeah.
These stages of gain, just subtle. And what I'm listening for is the fact that they don't color the tone too much.
Right.
And then what you got there is a little chorus, vibrato, and delay, and Bob's your uncle at that point, And then this guy, for whatever the hell I can't find with these, but it seems to do the trick, and I actually like it, and I can pick it up, which is a big deal to me.
Right.
It means more than anything.
Yeah, throw and go. That's great. Well, man, Dan, I am really grateful for you meeting with us today.
Thank you.
And just kind of bring us through this journey. I mean, what an incredible, God, what an odyssey, man. It's way more than I deserve. I'll say that, but it's a hell of a great ride. Yeah.
And it's it's like,
I can't wait to see what's next.
Well, the interesting thing is I didn't plan beyond doing a record, and I to be honest, I didn't do it for anything, but I wanted, I got 5 grandsons, right? They're just little bitty things, but I want them to know what their grandpa did.
Yeah.
And so that started out, but then it became way more than that. It's like, no, it's a piece of me. I like, and plus I like playing the guitar.
Right.
As a matter of fact, I'm telling all my friends, let's lose, what do you call it? The preferences, this sounds so sacrilegious, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to offend anybody, but I can't be totally. It was like, but my pronouns, right? My pronouns. My pronouns. Don't call me a record producer. Call me a guitar player, because that's really. I mean, I was just a producer or a guitar player pretending to produce. My worldview is still like this. I'm a guitar player. Everything comes through the guitar.
Right.
And I freaking love these guys. It's like, and I have fun doing this. And so what comes next, you know, maybe I'll start writing a few more tunes. You know, if some people like this music, and actually even if they don't, I'll just probably write some more songs and do them for myself, you know.
Yeah.
What the hell?
You know, isn't that funny though? It's like the older I get, guitar becomes strangely more important to me.
Yeah.
And keeps like revealing new things. It's shocking, you know.
Well, I mean, if that's who you, if you became you because of this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, right.
You can get, you know, there were days when there were years, what am I saying? There were decades when I would never go on a vacation. I'd play 8 to 10 hours a day, every day, and then all of a sudden it got cut off because I had another job, you know,
Yeah.
and you know, you could, at some points I look at it and go, why did I do that? But it's kind of pointless. Life takes you where it's going to take you.
Right.
And maybe I wouldn't have rediscovered the guitar, you know, and said what I'm saying now, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it all has to fit, right?
Right.
So
right.
that's at least that's how I rationalize it at the end of the day, you know.
Right. Yeah. Well, Dan, thanks a million. Y'all check it out. What is the album called?
When Words Aren't Enough. And
that's good.
And even that, I didn't even know. I actually wrote that as the title. I had to come up with something from Sherry.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I mean, I'm sure that title's been used before, but I can't quite describe a relationship that I've had, you know, since I was 13 years old. Well, I write shitty lyrics, so let's just say that. so that was my cop-out. But actually, words don't, you know, it's like when you're trying to describe a transcendent, you call it a spiritual experience, words always get in the way, right?
Right.
Because when you try to quantify that experience, so self-serving in every direction, that seemed to be my description of that little piece for Sherry, right?
Wow.
And I thought, and I was thinking, well, that's what instrumental music is,
Oh,
right? And so I'm telling a story. Don't even know what story. Maybe 100% of what I'm telling, but that's up for the listener, right? They can hear it and they can make it their own.
Yeah. Oh, God. Okay.
So yeah, and it comes out. Can I?
Yes.
Can I do my pitch?
Yeah. The people need to know.
Okay. So this is. I'm not really good at this, but I'm gonna do it. By
We're
God.
putting you up to it, Dan. You don't have a choice.
This is so the record comes out tomorrow. As a matter of fact.
Oh, fantastic.
It's May 30th, and you go to bakedalaskarecords.com. You got to make sure it says records on there, because I actually went to the site before the records is on it, and it's like pot.
It's a
gummy.
marijuana strain.
Yeah, it's a great.
I mean, I don't know how I know that.
It
but
might be helpful to maybe go to both. Make the music a hell of a lot more enjoyable.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Do them.
So,
Buy
but
them both.
I
Yeah.
did. I told somebody the other day. They said, "How can we get this record?" And I said, "Yeah, just go to bakedalaska.com." And I said, "Well, here, I'll just show you." And I said, "Well, I don't see my record on there."
Yeah, it's like, wait a minute, I'm in Bake Alaska right now.
That's right. Anyway, but thanks, John. I appreciate that.
Oh yeah, Dan. Hey y'all, till next time.
I pretty quickly settled into the Dario Strings EXL on all my electrics, the EJ16s, EJ26s, EJ1221s, EXL 115W. I'm a happy boy with all of those strings.